Welcome to Transformed and Transformational, the Teach Beyond podcast. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're here to explore what it means to be transformed in our own lives and how that overflows to living lives of transformational impact in our communities.
We're in our third week of our Advent series now, where we're talking with different guests about various aspects of this season and sharing stories about Christmas celebrations around the world.
And this week is our Work and Calling series, so we're talking with a Teach Beyond member about his story.
Our guest today is Danny Plett, who we actually could have featured in our 70th anniversary series last month, because he was deeply involved in Jan's Team music ministry in German-speaking Europe after the era with our guest from episode 161, Jack Stenicus. So if you didn't get a chance to hear those 70th anniversary episodes, we'd encourage you to check that out to get the full picture of what Jan's Team, now Teach Beyond, looked like before Danny's music ministry.
Danny Plett grew up in Canada, surrounded by a rich musical tradition and a love for speaking the truth and living out the gospel. Danny taught himself to play the piano and released his debut album at the age of 21. Since then, he has dedicated his life to singing the good news of Jesus around the globe, including a significant time spent in Germany.
Today, Danny lives in Canada and continues to write songs, lead worship workshops, and mentor young worship artists. And we're looking forward to hearing about his Christmas tour throughout Germany. Also, just as a heads up to our listeners, this episode contains talk about self-harm, suicide, and mental illness.
Let's go over to the conversation with Danny now. Welcome to the podcast, Danny.
Hey, thanks. It's great to be here.
Hi, Danny. It is so great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for taking time to talk with us today. For those who don't know or aren't familiar with your music, can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Oh, wow. I'm 61 and I've been doing what I do since I was 18. I'm a piano player. I'm a singer-songwriter.
That's great. And did you start singing before you started playing piano, or did they kind of come together in your journey of music?
You know, like so many musicians, I grew up in a musical family. My dad was a pastor and my mom was a classical singer. She was actually very gifted. And so it was kind of a perfect combination for us as kids to learn music at home and have a place to then perform music in church.
Hmm.
And so that was something that I did from the time when I was small. And we always had our worst family fights in the practices because everybody wanted to be the boss and tell everybody else what to do. But
Sure.
it was a good mill and a good crucible kind of for learning music. And my mom was a good teacher and she taught us. And she tried to teach me piano, but I didn't do so well with her being my piano teacher. So kind of had to give that up. Then when I was 12 years old, my sister, she had a friend. How did that go? Because she had a friend that played piano and actually wrote little melodies on the piano. I thought, hey, that looks really interesting.
Yeah.
And I kind of tried doing that, and I was able to, which was a shock to me.
Yeah.
And I just got into it like that. And by the time I was 18 years old, I was writing songs and
Yeah.
uh, doing a bit of performing here and there. And after high school, I got into singing on jingles. Remember jingles? Ice cream and pizza place and whatever. I can't even remember them all, but that was also a really good training ground because they would have been
Wow.
in a professional studio, and I got to learn how to record in a professional studio
Wow.
singing jingles.
So do
And
you have those like still going in your head, Danny? Like, do you still like sing the pizza jingle in your head?
yeah, some of them, yeah, but
That's kind of the
not
point,
really
right?
often. But yeah, sometimes if I think
It
there's one
comes back
particular
around.
one, the one that I auditioned with, I still have in my head.
Oh, funny. That's so funny.
Yeah, and then when I was 21, I got to record my first album in the same studio that I did the jingles in,
Oh,
which was
wow.
just that was so exciting. It's like a dream come true and a
Mm,
prayer come true.
mm,
And as I progressed and got older, obviously Sherry and I got to know each other, and we wanted to have a family. And I'd always heard how hard it was to make a living doing music,
mm.
and I just prayed and I said, Lord, I can't imagine not doing music.
Yeah.
But it seems like it will be really hard to feed my family. So could you make me successful? And my idea of success was basically being able to do music and putting food on the table. That was my idea.
Yeah. Right, right, right.
And uh, and he's answered that prayer in so many ways and in
Mm,
such surprising ways.
mm, mm.
But it's been uh, a possibility. I was able to do music and be creative and write songs
Yeah.
and take care of my family.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we want to dive into more of all the parts of that story. That's such a great setup for hearing more about what you do now and also rewinding all the way back to where that began. And you've set the stage for that. Danny, it's interesting. We're talking about music, and in Teach Beyond, we might think, okay, so you're a music teacher, and that must be how this plays out. But you have sort of a unique role in Teach Beyond. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looks like right now? What you do with Teach
Yeah,
Beyond?
I know it's really an interesting thing. It's a bit of an anomaly. Teach Beyond in its initial iteration was Jan's team. And Jan's team historically always used music in a huge way in in their crusade ministries and their other ministries. And so when I joined Jan's team in 1992, that was still a very very big part of their identity in Germany. Germany had a recording studio, and I did a lot of my recordings there. In 2013, we moved back from Germany to Canada. We had been out there for 22 years, and I took on the worship pastor role of a church here in our town. And 6 years later, when that came to an end, um, it was just a natural thing to go back with Teach Beyond. Now it was called Teach Beyond. Well, teach, I mean, what, and we had those conversations. But we found in a kind of really natural way. I've been doing teaching all the years that I've been doing music ministry, mentoring, teaching, workshopping, seminaring with young musicians, singers, worship leaders, songwriters, and things like that. And so there was that pedagogical tie-in to Teach Beyond. But I continue to perform concerts, and that's primarily kind of in a public way what I continue to do. But here in Canada right now, the last 4 weeks uh, I've been teaching my worship workshop at our church. But I do consider myself primarily a performance artist.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, with a teaching kind of B side.
Yes. Right, right.
I love it. I love the passion and the skill you have being able to kind of pass that along to the next generation, to those who are interested in learning.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things that I do. I just love that part. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great. You mentioned earlier how you started in 1992, and I'd love to go back to that beginning of when you joined the Jans team, or maybe even before that. What kind of led you to getting involved with the Jans team and hearing about them for the first time and starting that journey?
Well, interestingly, my mom, when she was 9 years old, she went forward at a Jant's Team crusade
Hmm,
and accepted Christ. And
that's
so
amazing.
Jan's Team, for her, was always she always had a bit of a soft spot for Jan's Team, and I heard about Jan's Team all my life. We also had, their recordings and stuff, and their music wasn't really my music; it was more my parents' music. And so in my background information, Jan's Team was always a thing. And then when I was in college, I was in a singing group, and we wanted to do a summer ministry thing. And we contacted a number of mission organizations, one of which was Jan's Team. And Jan's Team was the only one that wrote back and said, "Yeah, join our ministry. It's called One Accord." And it was in 1984, and that was the year that the group that we were a part of, my music group, we kind of assimilated into One Accord. We went to Hungary, Romania, and Yugoslavia. This was before the fall of communism, so we got to see these three countries behind the Iron Curtain, which was an incredibly life-giving and changing experience. And my wife Sherry, she was also on that tour, and uh, our relationship progressed, and we got engaged, and we knew that music was going to be a part of what our life was about. And shortly after we got married, Jan's team wrote to us and asked if we would be interested in coming to Germany as missionaries to work with the Jan's team. Whoa, I mean, that was a bit of a weird thing for me because I was thinking, Toronto, Vancouver, New York, Nashville, LA, maybe. Um, but as a missionary, can I do music as a missionary? To raise support? Ooh, it's kind of scary. Um, but my prayer had always been, I want to have I want to be able to provide for my family. I want my ministry to affect people for Jesus Christ. And I want to be able to not burn my family out with me being gone 250 days a year. And that was something that, interestingly enough, Jan's team that had a big emphasis on, put a big emphasis on music, really, really emphasized. They said, we have a limit as to how many days you can be on the road because your family is so important. And it was like, whoa, this is such a cool way that the Lord answered our prayer. And we took a year to decide because we had just been married. But at the end of that year, we had talked to different people, accountability people, people that we considered mentors in our lives, and we felt that this looks like something that might be something for us. And we began to jump through the hoops of what it means to be a missionary. We started raising support, and we came to Germany in 1992 with a less than 1 year old daughter, and we stayed for 22 years. When initially we were thinking we were gonna stay for maybe 2 years, but 2 years became 4, it became 12, became, 22. And, uh, and then we moved back to Canada in 2013, but I'm still back. We're both still, with the organization and happy to be there and seeing how God has so interestingly and in such a fantastic way answered our initial prayer when we were, newly married.
You mentioned when you were telling your story about thinking about going to Toronto, New York, LA, you had dreams of going big. So when you decided to go to Germany, did you feel like you were kind of giving up those dreams, or was that a sacrifice? What was
Yeah.
the yeah? Okay. How did you make that decision to kind of pass on the kind of big dreams or whatever
Well,
those might be?
I had told the Lord, "I'll go wherever you want me to go." And so I had to kind of,
Mm.
fulfill that promise. But yeah, that was a tough one for me because, for the first we were thinking for the first 2 years, we'd go 2 years and then we'd come back and then, then I'd work to branch out into some of these bigger venues. And like I say, 2 years became 4, became 12, became 22. And in that process of the 2 years being extended to many more, I often I often struggled with the idea that the longer I stay here, the more bridges I'm burning, so that I might never, um, based on my age and where I was at with our family, I might never be able to do what I had dreamt about doing. um, in some of these bigger venues. And to me, that was a bit of a loss, and it was a struggle. But in looking back now, um, it wasn't a loss at all. It's the God's economy is just so different, and what we consider big and what we consider successful is maybe great and for some people, but it's so just it's a bit of a misnomer in the economy of God's kingdom. And I began to see things very differently. I began to see success and see, what was significant, what was, important in a completely different way, and in a way with time lines up closer and closer to the kingdom values that we see in the Bible. And that was a very, very good thing to learn, a good thing to experience.
Mm. Wow, I think probably so many people can relate with the sacrifice of even what we understand to be significant. What does impact look like? What we think we're going to do with our
Right?
lives.
Yeah.
There's certainly the element of first deciding to go overseas and become a missionary that is a wow kind of decision. Like, okay, I'm doing this is a different trajectory, but maybe we think it's, only for a year or two. But as that deepens, what I'm hearing is it was still a continual surrender, trust to the Lord, his timing, his way, ongoing.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
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 And fraught with tears, fraught with frustration, fraught with fear at times, but also kind of saturated with, God, I wanna trust you. I will trust you. I can trust you for this tiny step. I can trust you for this, and that process. And coming coming through some of those caves of fear and anxiety into a place that opened up in a way that I could never have ever imagined.
Yeah, there's that element of over time, things continue to grow and we continue to grow. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of change in your role in what things actually are like in doing ministry. Things aren't
Mhm.
just the same for 20, 25 years. So how have you seen that grow and change over the years, Danny?
Well, when we first came there in 1992, I was together with 2 other musicians. We formed a kind of trio, and we were
Mm,
together for 4 years. Then that came to an end, and, I went into I spent a lot of energy and time into the project called One Accord, and we kind of switched from being, we switched the project into being something very, very contemporary, very modern, and I did that, then for the next number of years, and then in I believe it was 2004, then I recorded, my solo albums, or I started recording my solo albums, and since then, I've just kind of been a solo artist, within it, yeah, and so there's been different iterations and projects along the way that I I spent most of my main the lion's share of my energy, but now basically I'm just, me.
Danny, a lot of your songs have a theme of finding hope in the dark places. Is there a reason? Is there something in your past that kind of makes you gravitate towards that theme?
Yeah. My whole life since I was 18 has been pockmarked by seasons of severe depression and anxiety. There's a lot of people nowadays that can identify with that. There's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of anxiety out there, and the kind of character I am, I've had major struggles with anxiety and fear. So actually, my last episode, it was a 2-year episode actually, and it was right before we moved back from Germany to Canada, and I was actually in a clinic for about 8 weeks where I, um, had to get stabilized again, and, um, and obviously during those dark times, during those times of depression and anxiety, your mind is inundated with all kinds of negativity. And, I believe it as a believer, I believe also that in those seasons of vulnerability, the enemy comes and he really tries to ramp up, turn the volume up on fears and crazy ideas right to the point of self-harm and, suicide. And, that was definitely stuff that I was dealing with. I believe it's a mental illness. I believe that it's a scientific thing. I believe there's a spiritual component to depression as well, but it's certainly not just from a spiritual point of view. But it it in those times, I just really struggled with faith issues, with God, um, with big life questions. And then coming out on the other side of those times of fear, is when clarity of thought is comes back. And in those, at that time, then there's a lot of material that I can choose from to write songs from. And, songs of hope, songs of lament, songs of joy because the dark days are over. Songs of praise and worship, songs that talk about my doubts and my fears. And many, many people can relate to that. I had a letter from somebody, just recently, telling me about a terrible situation that they went through, and they were on their way. They were on the highway, ready to drive into a tree, when God used music. God used well, actually, it was a song of mine to speak truth into their mind at that point. And so, there's something really economical about a song that you don't get through a message or talk necessarily. A song kind of focuses a thought. A well-written song focuses a thought and kind of it kind of is like a laser beam of that thought, and it goes deeply into people's hearts and minds, even though they might be struggling with difficult things, depression, things that would normally cloud their concentration or cloud their ability to think straight. And I've received so many letters from people, emails from people that speak of that, and to be part of that process to me is just so humbling. And it's like giving my little fish and bread and saying, God, use this to feed these people, feed people. And and I've just been so blessed that the Lord has given me the opportunity to speak that kind of truth into people's hearts and minds that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to do had I not gone through some of those dark days myself.
Yeah, because writing out of that pain that you have experienced, and even if it's a few years afterwards, you still you know that
Yeah.
from your own experience. It gives you a credibility, an authenticity, a realness, that isn't it's not just, "Okay, now I'm gonna use that," but really to say, "No, these are the words that I need to be reminded of too," and
Yeah, you're totally right.
really to speak into those situations. And songwriting, I mean, that is a big part of what you do, is a way to communicate the truth of the gospel in a poignant way that's different, like you
Mhm,
said, than a sermon or,
mhm.
a lesson of some sort.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Can you tell us a little bit about the songwriting process for you in general? Just,
Yeah.
what is that like for you?
Oh, man, I mean, sometimes, sometimes I'll have a melody that I like and that speaks to me on a certain level, and then I have to discover what that level is and what maybe the lyrics would be that work with that. Other times I'm impacted with a thought or an observation, which then with with time, sometimes quickly, sometimes really, in a kind of slower way, develops into a song. Um, I mean, there's a handwork aspect of songwriting that many people can learn, but then you have to put soul into that container. You have to put authenticity and a kind of realness that impacts people on a deeper level than just, "Oh, that's nice," or whatever, and that's a process that if you wanna be honest in that process, you have to it requires going through sometimes difficult times, and, I go through long periods of time where I don't write at all, and I always picture those times as being I'm collecting information, subconsciously and consciously, and then there will be a reason for writing songs, and then I'll unpack and use that material in the songs that I write.
Do you ever find that you've written a song and you listen to it, you like read it and you say, there is no, I was doing the labor of writing a song, but there's no, the soul isn't in it.
Oh, yeah, totally, and, my wife is really good with that because, she's not an effusive person at all, she's not a fan, and, she just kind of will say, a pithy thing, which really bugs me at the time,
Sure.
but it's usually true, and it gives guidance, and it's kinda
Hmm.
like, "Okay, well, this probably isn't really connecting." There's other ways that I get that too from sometimes I feel it in a visceral way. No, this is just this is like Much Ado About Nothing, or, it just kind of sound and fury. Maybe it's clever, maybe it's cute, but it's not really anything that has value. And so I usually don't chuck it. I usually file it away because there might be one aspect of it that might I could recycle somewhere else. But yeah, there are songs that I've written that I listen to now that I'm ashamed of, um, or that at the time seemed relevant, but now that time has passed and it has no more relevance. There's definitely that as well.
Let's take a short break to hear how Teach Beyond members celebrate Christmas in different parts of the world.
Hi, my name is Phil Dow. I'm the head of school at Black Forest Academy in Kandern, Germany. And one of the things that we love about celebrating Christmas in Germany is the rich traditions of the Christmas markets in Europe.
Hi, my name is Lindsay, and I am the third Culture Kid Care Coordinator for Teach Beyond. My family has lived in Dublin, Ireland, Burundi, and Kenya, East Africa. As you can imagine, celebrating Christmas in these places has been quite different. Celebrating Christmas in Ireland was magical. The streets would be decorated in white lights, literal chandeliers of white lights every year, and you could walk around the city until like 11 o'clock at night in the crisp air, and it was wonderful. So then moving to a tropical climate where it is pretty much the same temperature all the time was quite different. And at first it was hard. It was hard to get in the mood with the weather not changing and the lights not being hung and all those things. But someone who's a really good friend of mine now actually sent over a teeny tiny little tabletop Christmas tree our first year in Burundi, and we were thrilled. We decorated it and put all of our Christmas ornaments on it until you could barely see any of the green, and it was lovely. It was really just about keeping up with our traditions and doing things that were special and meaningful to us. That is what made the holiday lovely.
Hey, my name is Preston Parks. I'm currently serving as the high school Spanish teacher and the freshman level Bible and social studies teacher here at Faith Academy in Manila, Philippines. So how Christmas is celebrated here in the Philippines, it's actually so cool. Basically, starting as early as September, you start to see Christmas decorations going up in malls and public places, stores, things like that. And they call September through Christmas through December the Ber months because they all end with BER, and then Ber because of cold. And so it's just so cool. Starting with September, you get to start feeling Christmassy and getting into the spirit. And then by the time you're into November, December, it's full-fledged 40-foot high Christmas trees in the malls and Christmas music everywhere. It's just such a cool atmosphere to be a part of. And then, of course, we have our own family traditions that we bring into it, reading the Christmas story, how we open presents, how we fellowship as a family and with other believers, co-workers, friends, things like that. But it's so cool to be part of a culture that celebrates Christmas for a third of the year. Thank you.
For our weekly spotlight, we are focusing on International Academy of St. Petersburg, Russia. To learn more about opportunities to serve at IASP, visit patreon.org/go.
And now back to our conversation with Danny. There is a lot that goes into songwriting, and I know different people approach that process differently. And this is part of our Advent series specifically. So I'm curious specifically about writing a Christmas song, what goes into that, and maybe the why behind writing songs for this season when we have the Christmas carols and we have, so many Christmas songs already. What I guess that could be said about all songwriting, like why write more songs, right? But maybe
Uh,
specifically at this time of year.
I love Christmas. Always have, always will. I love the shallowness of Christmas, but the reason I love the shallowness of Christmas is because I know the big idea behind it, and the big idea behind it even gives the shallow, fluffy stuff a depth. And so for me, Christmas is really just kind of my favorite time of the year, and it's when the Savior of the universe entered my world, and there's just so much material there that can be written in countless songs. And uh, and for whatever reason, I've written quite a few Christmas songs, and in Germany, I'm kind of becoming known as the Christmas artist because the major tour I do every year is my Christmas tour. I do other concerts during the year, but the biggest audience that I get is at Christmas time. But I want to write. I don't want to write. I want to write songs with depth. I want to write songs that go to the true spiritual meaning of Christmas, and and for the unplumbable depth of what took place at Christmas. For that reason, I love Christmas. And my mom was like that too. She loved to decorate the house and stuff for Christmas time, and she would always say, we're going to be celebrating Jesus' birthday, and I'm so in love with Jesus that I just want the whole house to feel it. And so she would put the decorations up as a celebration of Jesus' birthday. And she would always frame it that way to us kids as well. So I kind of picked up on that. I thought that was cool.
Mhm. I love that. That kind of answers one of my questions is going to be, did you start loving Christmas when you moved to Germany for the first time and got to experience German Christmas and Christmas markets? And your tours often end up in Germany too. So conveniently enough, you get to be in Germany during those
Yeah,
seasons.
yeah. And what I've loved about experiencing Christmas in Germany is that they kind of downplay it a little bit. It's more about the quality instead of the quantity, and that's something I really have appreciated about Christmas, especially Christmas in the East, in Sachsen, Thüringen. Um, they have such an interesting history in how they've incorporated Christmas into it, and the villages, and yeah, I mean, if you just want I, if you just want an idyllic kind of Christmas thing without any meaning behind it, go to a Christmas market. But I love a Christmas market because the lights represent and symbolize to me Jesus,
Yeah.
Mhm,
and the
mhm.
Yeah. They have
celebration.
meaning to you
Yeah,
separate from what the people who hung the lights might
yeah,
intend.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, as you are on this tour, how do you plan a tour route? How do you come up with the different venues you're going to go to, the places you're going to visit?
Yeah,
How
that's
do
a
you
great
figure that
question.
all out, and who's coming with you while you're traveling for this tour?
I have a team in Germany made up of 3 or 4 different people that are on the ground there that organize the logistics and the tour route and the promoters. I don't have to do that from here. That would be an impossible task. So they're there, they do that, and, the tour is gonna be we're gonna be in 12 different places all over Germany, west, east, north, and south. And the people that I work with out there I've been working with them for over 30 years already. And they were also part of Jan's team for many years. And some of the musicians that I bring along on tour are people that I've mentored in the past, singers that I've mentored, um, musicians that I've mentored or have played with professionally out there.
As you're thinking about this tour, what is new this year? What are you looking forward to or excited about versus things that you know are a bit challenging about being on tour? Give us kind
Yeah.
of the behind the scenes.
Well, I'm excited to be introducing a couple songs. This fall, I released 3 brand new songs, um, and we're going to be playing 2 of them, um, and some new material that is coming into the repertoire is something I'm excited about. Um, there, so far, everything is working out really well, and so I thank the Lord for that. But I know that things that can change. We've had difficulties before, as all human projects in the
Sure.
world have.
Yes.
And so it's just part of the beauty of living on the earth. Um, but I always pray that God would protect us from, the big stuff, the big things that could go wrong. But even there, in His mercy, He allows things to happen. But right now, I'm feeling really at peace about it. I feel really prepared. I feel more prepared for this tour than I've felt in the past. I'm hoping that I won't get sick because it's a real struggle to sing through a cold or a sore throat or something like that. And that's I'm ingesting a lot of vitamin C right now so that I hopefully don't get sick. Um, and then I always pray that we have safety as we travel. We cover
Mhm,
thousands and thousands of kilometers,
mhm,
and my biggest my biggest prayer request, my biggest prayer is, God, prepare the people in advance to hear these songs, to hear the truths of these songs, to hear the depth of the Christmas story, to understand that. And I pray that people that come to the concerts will become followers of Jesus, and followers of Jesus that are at the concerts, that they'll be able to go deeper in their faith, and that what they hear through the songs and what's said would just draw them closer to Jesus. That's my big request and big motivation for doing what I do. And that we would have fun too.
That is important.
You mentioned going to Christmas markets and how there's not a lot of the reason for Christmas present in those. So when you're traveling and doing a tour in Germany and German churches, who's attending? Are these Christians who know the Christmas story, or are these Germans who just want to hear some Christmas music?
We do this hand in hand with churches, local churches, and their motivation to do this is to bring the message of Jesus to their constituent, their region, also to have a presence in their region so people will know them. And so a lot of people that come there are people that belong to the church, and they bring their family, they bring their friends, they bring their coworkers, and the people that they bring with them are often non-believers or very kind of far removed from being living a life of being a Jesus follower. A couple of years ago, I remember a couple came, and they were a successful business couple, real estate, and they had been invited by Christian friends of theirs, but they were not believers. But how moved they were, and how well, yeah, just the word is moved. They were just moved with the depth of the meaning of what they were hearing. They loved Christmas. The Christmas markets, all that, but they had never really gotten in touch with how deep the Christmas message goes, and that was something that they were very, very impacted with. And I believe and know that they will be the relationship with their Christian friends will continue, and that the concert may be a step in their becoming Christ followers. But every year I get emails from people that where the Holy Spirit has used the songs and used what's said in the concerts to really, really speak truth into their lives. And people speak about saying their yes to Jesus as a result of the concerts or the song or um, whatever. And so it's just a huge privilege to be able to be involved in something like that.
I think I remember correctly, Danny, that last year before you went on your Christmas tour, you had a chance to visit Ukraine before you began your tour. Can you tell us about that trip, and if it did impact your tour, how it impacted going into the tour having just visited Ukraine?
Yeah. Well, last year was the second time I'd been there, and I go to the western part of the country, quite far removed from the actual place of the war, where the war takes place. But they're still very affected because the whole country is at war. And one of the most impactful things that I experienced there was being brought to a graveyard of the soldiers that had died in the war from that city. And as far removed as that city was from the war, physically, their young men are going to the war, and they're dying. And this was a cemetery that had hundreds and hundreds of fresh graves, and all of the pictures of the young men were posted at the grave that they were buried in, and it was really, really a sobering moment for me. And in light of that, how do we view Christmas? In light of that, how do we view the coming of the Messiah? And um, it struck me that in view of the wars, in view of the struggles that these people are going through, the Christmas message is even more relevant than, let's say, in a land where there's prosperity and everything's going well. That the message of Jesus is even more powerful for these people going through the suffering that they're going through. And that kind of stayed with me through the whole tour then last year, um, and colored it for me in a sense. And I just continue to pray for that country they'll be able to get to a place where peace once again is established. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. The angels came and said, peace on earth, goodwill to men. And the message of Jesus is one of peace. Um, and it's a message that, peace we can experience maybe in little bits and pieces, no pun intended, but the real peace that we long for is can only be found in Christ. and that's something that is extremely needy in our world, and will continue to be needy in our world. The need will never go away for that message to be spoken and sung, and so it's yeah.
I'm struck as you're talking about earlier about kind of the songs and how they speak to you when going through depression or anxiety, and then going to these cemeteries where people have died and in the war, how the Christmas message does have something for them.
Hmm.
And then comparing that to the happy, kind of fluffy Christmas markets in Germany, how those might not be able to speak to those deep needs, and just how the real Christmas message does have such depth to it.
Yeah, it's an incredible message. I mean, the whole message of Jesus is incredible. I mean, Christmas and Easter and his life and everything, but the coming of the Messiah, the penetration of God Almighty into our world is just such an amazing story.
And he came to a volatile political situation. Like when he came to, it wasn't to
Yeah,
a happy time and
no,
peaceful and all that, right? So
yeah,
again, speaking to how it is a relatable, it is a real experience to recognize that in the midst of our darkness that his
mhm,
light shines through, and that's what we
absolutely.
see in just the Christmas lights. That's what we're reminded of, right? That
Yeah,
Jesus is the light of the world and light shines in darkness, the
exactly.
brightest. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true.
Well, Danny, you've been writing and playing music for all these years. What does it mean to you to still be doing that now? And what would you say it takes to stay in it for the long haul, even when you thought you were just, doing it for a year or two at the beginning?
Yeah.
Here you are looking back.
Well, to tell you the honest truth, I think the thing that has kept it viable for me to over years and years and years, I'm in my 60s now, I'm 61, has been the fact that I've been able to do it in a measured and a moderate way instead of a big time way. Had I you know, gone to some of these music centers that would have allowed me to, on a huge stage, do my music, it would have required me probably to travel um, a lot more. 250 days a year isn't too many days for some people, and they blow the wad in a very short period of time, um, or they have to achieve a certain amount of success so that they can spread then the following years out over many years. And the thing that I've been very privileged to be able to do is I haven't had to live from my gigs. I haven't had to be out there like playing every single venue that I can away from family and friends, getting burned out. I've been able to do this in a way that has been part of the church as a parachurch organization. Um, it's lacked a lot of the glamour and a lot of the power or whatever that the world can offer, but ultimately it's so much more sustainable this way and healthy this way, and it's actually allowed me to into my 60s continue to do this, and I plan to continue doing this as long as I can. I don't want to retire in this, in the classical sense of retiring, because I just so very much enjoy being part of the process of bringing the message of Jesus to people through music.
Yeah, and through pacing yourself through all these
Pacing does a
years,
lot, yeah,
right? You've
yeah,
paced yourself, and so you can say, what does it look like to continue to bring that truth and light
yeah,
in this season, and
yeah,
every season continue to surrender that to the Lord, and I
absolutely.
so appreciate that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I have friends that, they've lost their wives, they've lost their children due to the rat race of the music industry, you know? I mean, there's other people that have been successful in it, person can be, but for me, I know that when I prayed that prayer years ago, probably when I was 20 years old, God, I wanted to do music. I can't imagine not doing music, so I want my family to be healthy. I want them to be fed. I had no idea at that time how God would answer that prayer. And looking back now, how he's answered that prayer, it was just genius. Just You know, it was just so wise, and I thank him so much for that.
Thank you, Danny. This is such a good message, such a timely message for us. Um, as as we let you go, as we say thank you for this conversation, there's one last question we ask all of our guests, and that's what's one thing that's changing your life right now. So this can be something really big or something small, but something that's making a difference in your life right now. So I'll go first, and then Heather will go. So you get a little bit of time to think about it. But the thing that's changing my life is something I've actually mentioned a year ago about, is I just started a new journal. So this happens regularly. I fill up a journal and then I get to start a new one. So always an exciting time to put away the old one and start something new. So that's what's changing my life this week.
This is the time of year, new journal time.
Yep.
We'll set our watches and check back in with you in a year. Well, actually, mine is also something that I know I've shared in the past that's coming back. And one of my friends hosts a hobby night every other Monday night. And it's during the season that is the longest night. So the darkest season of the year, she has these hobby nights because we tend to have fewer things, activities happening during these darker seasons. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that through the Northern Hemisphere winter and get to do different things in community. So that's what's changing my life lately. What about you, Danny?
I think probably the thing that's changing in my life is that I'm learning to go slower. I'm
Hmm.
learning to sweep the kitchen floor slower. I'm learning to work slower. And I'm not talking about slow.
Hmm.
I'm talking about like 5% slower. Just to take that edge off, the edge of hecticness off,
Yeah.
and do it more mindfully. I think
Hmm.
that's something that I'm learning. I'm also in better shape now than I have been in probably all my life. I do a lot. I work out a lot, and I'm not saying that to brag or make other people feel shamed or whatever. But it's something that I just never thought would be so enjoyable, and it's as good for my head as it is for my body, and that's something that's given me a lot of quality of life that is changing slowly.
Well, Danny, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation, for sharing your story, and for sharing how God's been at work in your life way back in your growing up years, in your early days of ministry, and even today. And so we just really appreciate your time and your ministry.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking with you guys.
Keen, it was so interesting to hear how music has been a part of Danny's whole life. And then he's been in these different seasons and has followed Jesus' direction to different places and had different opportunities over time.
It's so interesting to hear how Danny's desire to serve God has guided him throughout the many paths he's taken and the heart behind that.
Absolutely. Well, Kian, Danny, and I all serve with an organization called Teach Beyond. As you have heard, education and music play a big role in missions, and Teach Beyond is a part of that.
As followers of Jesus, TeachMan is a global community providing transformational education services as part of God's ongoing mission to transform individuals and communities into all he intends.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about Teach Beyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share the show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next week.
Stick around to hear Christmas music from Danny Plett.
Herbei, o ihr Gläubigen, fröhlich triumphieret, o kommet nach Bethlehem. Seht das Kindlein uns zum Heil geboren. Oh, lasset uns anbeten. Oh, lasset uns anbeten. im Erdentag. Gott wahre Gott von Ewigkeit geboren, oh lasset uns anbeten, oh lasset uns anbeten, oh lasset uns anbeten, den König. Kommt, singet den Herren, oh singt ihr Engelschöre, frohlocket, frohlocket, ihr Seligen. Ehre sei Gott im Himmel und auf Erden. Oh, lasset uns anbeten. Oh, lasset uns anbeten. Oh, lasset uns anbeten, den König. Oh, lasset uns anbeten. Oh, lasset uns anbeten. Oh, lasset uns anbeten. Oh, lasset uns anbeten.